Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's a world no-gi champion, a Pan Am's no-gi champion, an ADCC East Coast Trials champion, and a finishers-only, sub-only champion. She's also a Sapatero Invitational champion. Before the black belt, she was a brown belt world no-gi champion and a Pan Am's no-gi champion. She was also a Pan Am's champion in the gi at purple and brown belt. She also wrestled extensively in high school and was a three-time All-American and a three-time Georgia State champion. She went on to wrestle for Life University. She trains out of Atos Jiu-Jitsu in Atlanta, Georgia, under Bruno Frazado. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Alex Enriquez. How are you today, Alex?
Hey, Ryan. Thank you. Doing well.
Excellent. So good to have you here, Alex. I really appreciate your time. Alex, it's been a while since you and I have spoke. For those that don't know, Alex and I both come from the Atlanta Jiu-Jitsu scene. And Alex, I remember when you were a juvenile, like in the kids divisions back in the day, and back when I used to ref, and you were already making noise as a young kid. And so it's really cool to see how high you've reached in the sport. Congrats on all your success.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. So for Alex, for the people that don't know your story yet, the question I always like to start with, tell us about where you're from originally and what life was like before you found Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, so my family is from Manila, Philippines. We immigrated to the States, to Georgia, around when I was in first grade. I don't even remember what year. So I was 5 or 6, so that was almost close to 20 years ago. So around then, and I had a great childhood growing up, especially in the Philippines. My family was wealthy. My mom worked in politics for the governor. My dad was in banking, and then we immigrated to the States because they were in search for the American dream. They wanted a better upbringing for my brothers and I. So they took a chance. I had some family already in Georgia. We actually ended up moving into their house with them when we first came to Georgia. And my own direct family all lived. My brother, my mom, my dad all lived in the same bedroom. All together for the first couple years until my family ended up buying the house directly next to our cousin's house. So we were still really close growing up. And my older brother, Kevin, was the one that ended up, even in the Philippines, he just wanted to fight all the time. He wanted to become a fighter. And so he would always, it was so funny, he would always get me to wrestle with him, and he's 11 years older than me. So he would end up, he would always have this game. It was okay, we're on the bed. Whoever gets pushed off of the bed, loses. And I feel that's when, as a kid, I first started getting concussions, because we were I mean, he was beating me majority of the time because he's 11 years older than me. And then there was one time where I beat him, and I'll never forget. And after that, I felt he stopped playing. I was oh, you don't want to play anymore because you got beat once? But
yeah, hang on to hang on to his record and run. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And my mom was always big into WWE, that back then when they had Triple H, John Cena, the greats, the OGs. And I actually ended up naming, my mom would always tell me stories about Andre the Giant. And so I ended up, when my mom was pregnant with my younger brother, they were asking me, it was hey, do you have any ideas of what you want to name your little brother? And I was Andre the Giant. And so he actually, his name is Andre, and he is a giant. I don't know if the name made him big, but I've never seen an Asian man so big. He's 6'2" or 3.
Oh, wow.
Wears size 14 shoes. I was dude, where did you, I mean, my dad's 6 foot, but my brother's huge.
That's
so
amazing. Yeah,
I don't know. It must have been
you passed some kind of energy towards him for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the American McDonald's. That's what I bought it on.
It must have been that.
Yeah.
All those hormones in the food.
So
yeah.
Exactly. So I my older brother was eventually looking for kept wanting, when we immigrated to the States, he was still looking for a gym to fight at, and he eventually ended up at Knuckle Up Fitness. And that's when, by the time summer of my 6th grade year, when I was 11, that's when I ended up, he was like, you should come try this, rather than, before the after school activity I was doing was like ATA karate. And I mean, it was fun, but it was like a lot of just like stances and forms. And so my brother was like, just try it one day. And then I went to go with him, and it was like amazing. Like, that was it. Like, the first day, and I was like, okay, I'm hooked. Let's go. Let's do it. So I just went to the gym every day after that, summer of 6th grade. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. That's so cool. Yeah, I remember distinctly, you mentioned the importance of your family and the impact they've had on you and the support that you've had. I distinctly remember your mom being at every single event, cheering louder than anybody. Your mom used to film all your matches and be cheering and coaching at the same time and looking like she's holding the camera well.
The camera was like over here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's what, like, whenever you're coaching someone and you're trying to film at the same time, eventually you're just filming your shoes and you're just yelling. Yeah. So you have the footage of like the mats, you know. But your mom, I remember her being like super dedicated to your process. So that's really cool that you guys have such a tight family structure and you have such a great support system. Once you started training jiu-jitsu, what do you think locked you in? What was it about jiu-jitsu that was more appealing to you than, say, the karate that you've been doing previously?
Yeah, so my first jiu-jitsu class ended up being, out of all the things, the first thing we were doing for warm-ups was jumping close guard. So wow, it was kind of scarring, to say like the least, because Steve was like, okay, you got to jump as high as you can, like aim for the armpits so you don't like mess up anyone's knees, aim for the armpits and like throw your head back and whatnot. And my partner at the time was just like, he wasn't catching me. He was kind of just like letting me fall. And so I like jumped up and I was like, okay, throw my head back. Boom. I just like hit my head on the, and I was like, I never want to do that ever again. And so it scarred me. Like the first year of my jiu-jitsu, I like always sat guard. Like I never jumped guard. And now it's like not as common, but I know how to jump close guard without hurting anyone. But it scarred me for a while. And then, but we learned how to do like a cross lapel choke or so. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like the first submission, essentially, like the first submission, I was like, dude, this is real. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I could really hurt someone. And so I was like, wait till I show my friends at home. I was like, so 11-year-old Alex, like we had, in our neighborhood, we had like a group of friends that we all kind of went to the same school, but we called ourselves, it was so funny, we called ourselves the Wild Bikers because we had our little bikes and we would bike around the neighborhood. I was like, nobody's going to mess with us.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure the wrestling with your brother on the bed got a lot more dangerous once you knew how to do a cross choke too. You know, that must have changed the dynamic even more in your favor. So that's really cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, so Alex, obviously in your time wrestling in high school, obviously you started with jiu-jitsu and then you transitioned your way over into wrestling by the time you reached high school. In your time wrestling in high school, you became the captain of the JV team despite being the only girl on the team. And then after that, you made it to the varsity team as a freshman. So to say that you did well in wrestling is an understatement. What was it like competing on an all-male team, though? Like, did that come with any extra pressure? Were there any unique obstacles you were faced with? Tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Oh, for sure. I was fortunate enough that like the coach of the at Cambridge High School where I wrestled was Don St. James, and he's a legend in the sport. He's awesome, and he was actually one of the very first Team Georgia girls wrestling coaches. So he was always like, he was always so supportive of me being on the team. He didn't want me. He wanted to make sure like I felt included and all that. And it was awesome. So like just having that support system, like from the main coach, the head coach, he was just like, you know, when I was on JV, I went to my first JV tournament. I like smoked everyone. And then because I just had like 4 years of jiu-jitsu versus kids even guys that just never wrestled before. And I wasn't at like an extremely heavy weight class where the strength was like mattering as much. but it was a way different story at varsity, you know. And I ended up making the varsity lineup because they didn't have a 113 at the time, and they're like, if you make 113, it's yours, you know. And you know, it was so cool that like I got my butt whooped in varsity, but I had a lot of experience. A lot of the guys, like some of the guys, of course, it was kind of weird at first. They're like, oh, a girl on the wrestling team. But when they realized, I was like, okay, I'm not leaving. And the more we all like hung out with each other, even summer practices, St. James would have us would let me do like jiu-jitsu matches with them, and I'd end up like tapping out like the state champs on our team. Nice. And they were like the older boys, and so they had like a big influence on the younger kids, younger guys on the team, and they're like, no, Alex is badass, you know, like, you know, she's cool, like she's the only girl I'll ever let tap me. I was like, I don't know if that works that way, but okay.
Yeah, it's not really something you get to choose, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really it was a really you know, it was definitely like I feel like I had to like earn their respect. But like even win or lose, like when I would lose, I wouldn't cry or anything. My mom would always be like, never let them see your emotions or something. So I just go home and cry in the shower for losing. But you'd see some of the other guys on the team, even like the good kids, like the good guys that were like older, like they would throw fits and tantrums after losing. And so the other kids were like, you know what, Alex isn't that bad. Like she's not a like a little like a little wimp when it comes to losing or anything. Like she could handle it. So I felt like I earned their respect, not even through just winning, but like how I handled myself, even through losing, you know. So it was a really great experience. I was definitely like wrestling in general, but especially my high school wrestling career, I feel like was definitely something that like molded me like mentally and physically. I mean, you could ask any kid that wrestles, they're like, this is the hardest thing in life. Yeah. Especially it's
unbelievable. It's an unbelievable character and work ethic building sport, and just the toughness you get from wrestling. It's something that, it's funny you mentioned Coach St. James. He actually coached at my high school when I was in high school. And one of my huge regrets is that I didn't wrestle in high school. I wrestled a little bit in middle school. And when I think about it now, I wish I could just get in a time machine and go back and slap myself in the back of the head and make myself go to St. James training, because wrestling obviously has tremendous benefit for jiu-jitsu, and then of course just in life, like we're talking about, it's a great character building tool. It's a great sport for to build work ethic and toughness. Let me ask you this: you said you had 4 years of jiu-jitsu before you started wrestling. What specifically from jiu-jitsu do you think helped you the most when you started wrestling?
It's just I was comfortable on my butt. I was very aware with like my body awareness, my spatial awareness of like let's say even if I get taken down, I wasn't like or like dropped to my butt, I wasn't exposing, and I could keep cutting the corner where other kids would just like bail. And sometimes I'd do that to a fault, like I wouldn't bail soon enough. But I got really good at leg riding, or like basically taking the back, riding on top. I got really good at that, and using those in power halves to turn the guys that were much harder to like hold down with just my arms. I got really good at using my hips and my legs to hold people down, and I felt like it kind of felt natural from the jiu-jitsu background.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, on the other side of that coin, what do you think are some unique lessons that you learned in wrestling that you don't think you could have learned in jiu-jitsu?
Oh man, it's like the reason why I did wrestling in the first place was to make my jiu-jitsu better. And I'm still reaping the benefits now, especially with like ADCC rule sets where it's like pretty heavy wrestling base. But my ability to scramble and just knowing where I'm at every position, I feel like my IQ for that is very, very high, and it's definitely come from wrestling. And just being able to transition a lot of wrestling as techniques into jiu-jitsu, and knowing like what where it blends into the jiu-jitsu rule set versus the wrestling rule set. So scrambling by far, and just everywhere, even whether it's on the feet or it's down on the ground. Just knowing, I try not to give up really any position at all whenever I'm competing or training. If the goal is like to not give up position and whatnot, you know.
I could totally see that, because in jiu-jitsu, I think that one thing that happens a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, because it's the art de suave, it's the smooth art, we have kind of a tendency to kind of flow between positions, and sometimes that can come with not passivity, but a more open acceptance of flowing to a position where now you're on bottom and you have your bottom game. Whereas with wrestling, it's like, dude, do not give an inch. Do not let this dude behind you. Do not let him pin you. Do not let him whatever. And so it's a very different mindset. And I could see, especially in regards to scrambling, which is something obviously very important in jiu-jitsu, that would be something you would bring with you from wrestling for sure. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that's cool too, you mentioned that you were real comfortable working on your butt. I could see wrestling up. I mean, the importance of wrestling up from guard now is something that's become a big thing that a lot of people are doing in jiu-jitsu now. How is that? How has that become a big part of your game naturally, since you were already good playing on your butt in jiu-jitsu and adding the wrestling skills? Do you wrestle up a lot in your game?
Yeah, I definitely feel like in the most recent year, that's been a big thing to add to my game. The biggest thing, especially with Bruno Frazzato, is that he wants all his athletes to be really well-rounded, not to have our goal is to not have any weak points in a game, to have a fully developed game. And I feel like a lot of what I was lacking when I first came to him is that my guard game, I didn't really have a very good guard. I always felt comfortable passing on top, but we first started with, guard retention, having proper framing. And then after that, after I felt comfortable with okay, I can defend my guard from being passed. I know where to frame. I'm not I'm always being responsible with my frames. Then after that, we started developing attacks, and the wrestling up portions felt very natural from me, using arm drags and just angles to be able to come up and be explosive. So that felt really natural. But and we're still developing, attacks staying on bottom, but I feel like it's starting to really blend very well. I feel very comfortable. Actually, a lot in training, what I do is I sit guard a lot. I actually play a lot more bottom, which is funny because when I compete, I'm always on top, because it's with default to A game or something. But I've been very happy with my more recent performances where, especially this past IBJJF Nogi Worlds in December, I pulled guard in every single match, and I was able to either wrestle up and score from that, or use it to get underneath my my opponent to end up sweeping them, taking their back, even using leg entanglement. So I'm definitely starting to feel more comfortable even using it at the highest level tournaments.
That's incredible. That's so cool. Alex, something that always really fascinates me about jiu-jitsu athletes, about athletes in general, but since I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, it's I especially take interest in the world of jiu-jitsu, is how you have, thousands of kids around the country who start jiu-jitsu, and some of them train for a little while, some of them reach the kinds of levels that you've reached. And I'm always interested in analyzing why one person ends up rising so far beyond other kids that start jiu-jitsu around the same time. I'd like to zoom in on a detail about your story, if you don't mind, that's kind of in relation to this. You mentioned that when you first started wrestling, this was at a point where you were the only girl on the team. And now it's interesting because now girls wrestling has grown tremendous, exponentially. I think I was just reading a thing the other day that it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world is girls and women's wrestling. And it's awesome to see that. But it sounds like when you were starting, it wasn't quite there yet. It was close, but not quite there. Yeah. How much do you think you mentioned earlier, you felt this desire to prove yourself, and that there was you had to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, it sounded like, to just not let people walk all over you and all that. How much of a factor was that, do you think, in your overall success that you've had as a competitor? Do you think that if you started at a point in time when women's wrestling was really established, that you would have had the same acceleration through the sport, I guess?
I definitely believe that, like, starting at the time that I did, it made me mentally tough, like very tough, stubborn, and I have that I learned that mindset early on, that like I wasn't afraid of wrestling anyone. It's like I've wrestled the guys that just try to rip my shoulders off. I've had surgery in high school because of, cutting weight wrong and overtraining and just always wrestling with a dude stronger than me. And, my body paid for it, but I was like, mentally, I was like, no, I'm fine. I think if I had started a little bit, if I had started a little bit later, especially now, I'm looking at our kids programs and whatnot. The techniques they're learning is like the same techniques we teach to our adults in our basics program, and they get it so quickly, and it's amazing. I feel like, yes, I probably, if I had started jiu-jitsu later, I probably would have become more technical, more faster, depending on, where I ended up, what gym and what program I was at. But in terms of like the mental fortitude that I have now and had then, I definitely feel like I wouldn't have had if I was, on a team where it wasn't so much tough love all the time, and it's nothing against like the females wrestling, now, but it definitely is tough, like just being the odd one out in the group all the time, so it definitely teaches you to, be to persevere. It's either, you stay there or you quit. And I had like Steve telling me like, oh, I shouldn't be wrestling with guys. And I was just so stubborn back then. Like, especially when I started like at 11 or so, like not everyone was going through puberty yet. Like the guys weren't all as strong. And so I was just like, I don't understand why I came back this coming year and my teammate just grew like 6 inches and he's all of a sudden stronger than me and he's beating me. And I was so frustrated by that. And Steve had to have that talk with me, like, okay, Alex, there's the point where guys are going to hit puberty. There's this thing called puberty. And I was like, oh, okay, well, no, I still think I could beat them. So it was just like, yeah.
But I mean, you continued even after that point in high school. You were continuing on and captain the team and all that. So obviously you were doing something right. I love hearing stuff like this because it's just another example that sometimes the obstacles we run into in life become the fuel that propel us forward. So it's just really cool hearing stuff like this. I think it's a really interesting detail about your story. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask you this. You talked earlier about the mindset of wrestling and how, wrestlers always seem to have this indomitable spirit. And it sounds like that was very much instilled in you naturally. The desire to defy the fact that you're the only girl and these guys are hitting puberty and you still don't want to back out. And thankfully you did not because you achieved great things. What do you think are some specific things about the mindset of wrestling that were most helpful for jiu-jitsu? We talked about the idea of scrambling, not giving up an inch. What are some other things? Is there anything else about the mindset of wrestling that you think has helped you achieve great levels in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, honestly, to a fault, I feel like it's pros and cons to it, but it was just like how hard you worked, like there was like equal sign success or something, how much success. And now as I've gotten older, I've become much smarter about that. It doesn't mean that like how hard I worked meant I had to kill myself and do and had to be dying every practice. That doesn't equal hard work. Hard work just meant like you were putting in the work. It didn't mean that intensity levels always had to be at maximum, and I can still, and now I've gotten much smarter about it. But definitely like just that work ethic. And I feel like that work ethic and that grind, that wrestlers grind and stuff, it would be crazy. And like, it is overtraining, especially for adults. Like, I don't think an adult can handle the amount of work that high school level athletes would do, because it was crazy. I mean, it's the same thing in college. A lot of collegiate sports and athletes they still overtrain a lot. Cause you're kind of in college, you're just like a number on the roster, you're replaceable. So it's like, once your body breaks, they'll just replace you with someone else. But like learning to become a professional athlete for yourself, the workload kind of changes. It still means you're working hard, but you're smarter about how you go about your routine. And, but I think a key thing that helped me growing up was Steve worked for an ammunition company back in the day when I was in early high school, and I had the chance to meet this guy named Jason Kuhn, who was a marksman, a professional marksman, and he used to win like so many titles and stuff, and he was kind of like my sports psychologist in a way, and it was really amazing for like such a young person to be able to have access to such a high level athlete. Like, he was one of the few that were getting paid in the sport and whatnot, and he was a very blue collar guy growing up. I think he was either from Missouri or Mississippi, and he started in archery, transitioned, and as a teenager, started winning a lot of archery tournaments, and then switched to shooting guns and whatnot. And he became very good at that and ran his own company. And I would always talk to him about his mindset going into things, and a lot of it was, what's the word? Narcissistic. And you have to have a little bit of narcissism. And when you talk to him, you could definitely see it. So I was like, man, do I really have to be? I was like, I feel like I don't want to be that person, But I felt like I was able to balance it. But, even though in my head, anytime I step onto the mat, whether they have more experience than me, like even as a teenager, when I was in the kids' colored belts going against like adults and even black belts, even though I know, like, everyone's like, they're going to win, they're black belts. I was like, no, I'm going to win. Like, and as a teenager, it's just like, yeah, I had a big head, but like it came from a place of not like ego, but it came from a place of like, no, I fully believe in myself because this is what I need to do to be able to beat them. So I'm not just going to lay down there and let them tap me. I'm going to really fight with all I have and, hopefully, possibly do something, to help me, progress better. And, you never know, you might win. Someone could make a mistake. Everybody's human, So he kind of drove that mindset into me early on. And it was really cool because from him and also one other sports psychologist, it was Bobby Doogie, and he was he even got to work with Kyle Dake at some point, and this was in like my early high school too. And he was at Morris Fitness in Alpharetta. I did some of my extra wrestling training over there too with Charlie. Yeah. He's amazing. He's always been super supportive, and I learned, I just was really fortunate with how many people I met early on in life, whether they were sports psychologists or just like really great technicians. And I felt like I was spoiled, honestly, growing up, that like I had access to so many different coaches that had such a wealth of knowledge that like I had the, the Southern, like, just be strong, be tough, and like, all that. But then I also had coaches that you're like, okay, this is the easier way out. Like, this is the technical way out. And so it kind of blended. And I felt like jiu-jitsu from the start for me always came pretty easy in terms of like, I understood the technique really easily. Like, you show me a technique once and I was like, okay, it makes sense. I got it. And then I would just keep trying whatever I learned in the specific training, in the live training. And it would work out pretty well, especially when I first started, I was probably a lot bigger than the boys, just because I was this height when I was like 11. I just stopped growing at 11. So I was a lot taller than the guys. So it gave me an advantage at first, and then eventually they started catching up and it got harder. But it was cool that I had that in the beginning. I was able to have, training partners that I could beat and training partners that would beat my ass too. So I feel like it's important to have both,
Oh yeah, you got to have a balanced ecosystem for sure. That's absolutely true. Yeah, one thing that I love about your story is just how diverse your experiences have been with working with different styles between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, working with different mental coaches from different backgrounds. You mentioned the marksman, and you mentioned the guy that worked with Kyle Dake, and you shout out to Charlie Morris. Charlie Morris was actually my wrestling coach once I came back eventually to try to learn wrestling.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, I did tons of work with Charlie, great guy. It's cool that you've had this diverse experience, because some people, I think, when they get involved in an art or they get involved in a gym, they tend to kind of stay within the walls. They kind of tend to close off and just think, okay, this is what I'm doing. I don't want to float off into other areas. What I'm doing is what I think is best. But when you see people that go out there and explore what's out there, you find all kinds of things you can blend together and make yourself more well-rounded. So that's a really cool aspect of your story. Another thing I like that you mentioned that the importance of confidence, and you mentioned that I'm sorry, forgive me. What was the mental coach that was a marksman? What was his name again?
Jason Kuhn.
So you mentioned that Jason mentioned that you got to be a little bit of a narcissist, and I really do agree with that. I think that in order to be an elite athlete, you have to have an extreme confidence in yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. It doesn't mean you have to treat people around you poorly or things like that. But you do have to definitely have a great belief in yourself. And I think that anyone that doesn't have that is going to eventually hit a wall, So that's really cool that at a young age you identified the importance of confidence, a good strong mindset, Alex, I'll tell you what, we've reached about the halfway point of the show here. This is where I always play a game with my guest. This is a game called the Pummel.
Oh, snap.
The Pummel is basically a series of random questions. Some of these are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But if you're down to play the Pummel, I'd love to play this game with you.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Question 1, what's the worst job you've ever had in your life? Have you had a job? Have you worked outside of jiu-jitsu? Okay, what's the worst job you've ever had?
Honestly, I wouldn't even say it's that bad. One of my first jobs or just like a busser or as a busser, as a young kid. And I did that even as I was as a teenager and a young adulthood. I was never if whatever job I had, I had a lot of restaurant jobs growing up just because, it's easy to take off time and get your shift covered in order to compete. And I had understanding bosses. They're like, I do jiu-jitsu. Can I and they were super supportive, but, until I worked up to become a server, I was just, busting tables a lot, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning toilets. And, it wasn't, I always my mom and my dad, they always worked so hard. When we moved to the States, they were working 2-3 jobs at a time and just, to provide for my brothers and I. And so I always had a lot of respect for them. So I was like, okay, any job I have doesn't matter. I'm going to clean that toilet as clean as it could be,
Absolutely. Any job is honorable if it's done well. That's for sure. I agree. I agree with that 100%. Also, there are a lot of jiu-jitsu folks out there that have bust tables. If you're ever in a restaurant, where there's a good jiu-jitsu scene in that city, don't mess with the bus boy. You never know, or the bus girl.
Right. Just look for the cauliflower.
Exactly. Be real polite to the people busting the table, because you never know. What do you think is a secret talent that you have that people might not know about?
Oh, secret talent. I don't know. I don't consider myself very talented other than jiu-jitsu. I was I put all my effort into jiu-jitsu. I see a lot of other Filipinos that can sing, they can dance. They're super talented. And I did not get that gene. And I'm so mad because I was why can't I do at least one or the other?
That's amazing. That's
so I was I just gave up and I was it's jiu-jitsu.
All in on jiu-jitsu.
That's it.
I love it. All in on jiu-jitsu. That's awesome. What do you think is the worst injury that you've had from training or competition?
Worst injury I've had, probably between neck injuries / concussions and my knee surgery that I had in college, just a meniscus repair. But I didn't realize how much, like, until I had a major knee injury when I couldn't walk and move around for myself, that I was like, oh my gosh, like, you really need, like, it's so hard when you can't walk and just transport yourself from one place to another. You're like, oh, I feel useless, you know? So probably the meniscus repair, but it went really well. I had a bucket handle tear in my right knee in college, and it was just from overtraining. I wasn't touching anyone else. We were running longer than the collegiate track team, and you're having people that wrestlers that, especially coming from the summer, like, that haven't ran at all, and they're not very well trained in running at all. And so it was just like everyone was like competing because the coaches were pushing us, like, you gotta want to win and stuff. And the next day, I didn't know anything about active recovery. My hamstrings were at the source, like, they were so tight, like as tight as a rock. And we were on the mats the next day, and we were just doing the line drills warm up. So we're doing a bear crawl to a knee slide, and I did the bear crawl to a knee slide. My knee popped, and then I like jumped to my butt, and my leg was just stuck at a right angle. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. I was like, I can't move my leg. I had to like raise my hands up. I was like, pick me up, help.
That's the worst. Well, I'm glad the surgery worked smoothly. Yeah, bucket handle tears are scary ones, because those can be difficult for sure, to say the least. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy that it wasn't too debilitating. It's funny, we were talking earlier about how the mindset of wrestlers. One thing I always appreciate about wrestlers I talk to is they seem to always be amongst themselves in a competition of like who suffers the most. You know what I mean? Like it's always like, it's like,
well, I had this.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, well, bro, I went to training with the flu and then did sprints up the hill. And the guys are going, yeah, well, I did the same thing, but I slipped in my puke and twisted my knee, but kept going. And it just gets like worse and worse. It's like, dude, you guys are just like killing yourselves. I mean, I appreciate I appreciate the mindset, but damn, dude.
Right. It's like, is this something I should be proud of? Like, I don't know.
It's like at some point you're just a masochist, man. Like, geez.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, when you were at Life, were you working with Omi Costa? Was he there?
No. Yeah, he is there. He's on the men's team, though.
Okay,
he dealt with the men's team.
Yeah, I didn't know if he coached on both sides or what. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, but he's great. I mean, actually, this season, for the team duels, Life University, both men's and women's, both won national titles. And nice. Omi's men's team defeated Grandview in the finals, who Grandview's been the reigning champions for like ever. Yeah. So, I mean, big congratulations to
That's incredible. Yeah, Omi's a real good dude. He helped me put together some seminars that we hosted at Life University way back in the day. So, yeah, I'm happy to see him. Yeah, awesome. Happy to see him winning, man. That's really cool. Let me ask you another one here. What do you think is your favorite bad food to eat? So when you're off your diet, what's your favorite junk food?
Gosh. So Faye knows I have like an obsession with like milk, with like sweet milks and stuff. So like if you give me like, we always go after tournaments, we get back home, we go to like Brazilian Bakery or Rio here in Marietta.
That's the spot.
And I get a acai bowl. And it's like, they'll give me the condensed milk and the leche de niño, the powdered milk. Yeah. And I will just like dump it. And I'll ask for more, and they give you a lot. And it's just like, my acai is no longer purple. It's like almost like this lavender white flavor. They're like, oh my God, that's so much condensed milk. And I was like, I think it's amazing.
That's so great.
And so I'll get that and like all the cakes, like tres leches cakes, like more milks, the better. Just give me like more than 3 milks. Give me like 10 milks.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's the spot. For anyone that's ever going through Atlanta, if you want to have amazing Brazilian food, it's Rio de Janeiro restaurant in Marietta, right? It's a city right outside of Atlanta. It's amazing. Amazing.
Yes.
It's funny. Like they actually have a cut of meat there that I haven't found. I'm living in Brazil now. I can't find this cut of meat that they have there. It's just the beef rib, but the way that the guy, the one that's on the bone, the big chunk of meat, I can't find that particular cut at least here where I live, I think the guy...
Man, even in Brazil?
I think what
Wow.
it is, the guy that owns that place, he looks, I don't know if you've seen the owner over there, he looks like a very German kind of guy. He's like a white dude with blue eyes. And so that means that he most likely comes from the very south of Brazil, where it's like all German and Italian heritage. So maybe it's something that's more common down there as opposed to where I am.
Yeah.
But anytime I go in there, like I almost don't need anything else. I need like some rice and then just like 20 of those. And I'm good.
Yeah.
Like anything
like,
else that they
it.
offer, it's like, yeah, the beef rib, this is all I'm really here for. Everything else is just like a side. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll need to get you like a sponsorship from the beef rib cut. I was like,
I will push that
which
product
Brazilian
so
guy?
hard. Oh, if they sponsor me, I'll push that product so hard for them. They have no idea. Alex, what do you think was the scariest moment of your life?
Scariest moment in general? Oh my gosh.
Any like near-death experiences?
Oh, that's so tough. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to think of like, well, oh my God, dude, I had like almost like a Final Destination car crash scene. It was insane. No. It was insane. I mean, luckily nobody was like hurt, nobody like died, or nobody had any major injuries, but it was so crazy. It was right after Worlds, I think, of like, I was I think either already in college or whatnot. And I was driving the car. Faye was in the passenger side, and we had both the dogs, Chico and Bia, in the back. And so I was like, no, not with the dogs. This will get everyone. They're like, not the dogs. And so I was sitting at this intersection right before the highway. This was in like not Roswell, but it was on 400, and it was right before, like, I think like Hammond Drive or something. There was an intersection. And so it was right before you merge onto the highway and whatnot. And there's a 4-way intersection. And then we were about like 4 cars back in the left turning lane. And so all of a sudden I'm just looking at the road. We're at a full stop and the light is red. And then I see this car go. This car is like kind of speeding through the light, and all of a sudden just does like a whole burnout. And I'm just like, whoa, what is that guy doing? And does a burnout and does like a full 180, but and it accelerates all of a sudden. Does a 180, accelerates to my far right. And I'm just like, Faye, look at that. I was like watching it happen, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, what's happening? And I was like, Faye, look. And then all of a sudden it keeps going, and it hits like the far right all the way at the front. We're like 4 cars back. But there's I guess there's not a lot of people there's nobody in the middle lane. Okay. So the driver clips the parked person on the far right and kind of bounces off like a pinball off the next 2 or 3 cars. And what it does is when it hit those 3 cars, it ended up turning the car into our direction, at Faye's passenger headlight. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh no, but the cars in front of me were still stopped. And then I was starting to panic. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And I'm just watching it happen, and then all of a sudden the car is turned towards us, and I was like, oh fuck. And I was thinking about just merging into the next lane, but there was oncoming traffic onto the next lane, and so it ends up hitting Faye's passenger more towards the front of the car. Thank God it was at the front of the car and not straight into her passenger door. But hits the front of her car, and it keeps going, but it ended up slowing it down enough that that car ended up kind of hitting the land and then eventually stopping, because it was going about probably between 20 to 40 miles an hour. It was so weird. It would hit something and it would speed up. And then it turned our whole car. We were at a full stop. It turned our whole car into a full 180, and it jammed us between 2 cars, and then the airbag, the smoke, everything went off. And immediately, all I said to Faye was as soon as it came, I was like, watch out, and then boom, it just hit us. God. And it was insane. It was, I hate like just remembering the smoke and stuff. I had PTSD at that intersection for a while. But I immediately, as soon as I looked, I was like, are you okay? And she was like, I'm okay. And I tried to open the door because there's so much smoke. And then in my head, I was like, the car's going to blow up. Yeah. I just thought, I was like, I need to get out of here. Yeah. I need to get out. I was like, I think I still have all my limbs. And I look at Faye and I was like, are you okay? And she's like, kind of shook. Yeah. But she was okay. And I turn around and I was like, where's the dogs? And Bia's like shaking. And I try to open my door and I realized I looked to my left and the car the car behind us is like in our door. Like, it was like sandwiched. And she couldn't get out of her door. So I climbed to the back and I opened the rear passenger door on Faye's side and people are already like running towards us and whatnot. And then the dogs, I guess, were okay because they jumped out of the car too. And they're like, oh my God, they have dogs too. But we were all okay. Everyone that got hit was okay. We were the car that ended up stopping that car. And what had happened was the lady that was driving was an elderly lady. She was in like her 70s and 80s. She was not really in a great condition to drive, but actually she's not the one that started the car accident. A company van ended up clipping her rear tire and she hit her head on her window and she went unconscious with her foot on the gas. So I was like, oh my God, this is like a scene straight from like Final Destination. It was crazy.
That is insane.
But fortunately she was okay too. So nobody was majorly hurt or injured, but it was just like watching the whole scene. I was like, I can't believe that happened. Like it was pretty insane.
That is crazy. I'm so happy you guys are okay. And I'm happy the old lady was all right too. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people that don't know Atlanta's traffic is one thing I do not miss about Atlanta. Atlanta's traffic is crazy. And like when you said that it was someone doing like a spin outs and like I thought right away it's a young dude doing burnouts.
Yeah.
Because they do that all the time. All the time.
Yeah, I was like, what is this guy doing? I was like, this is so crazy. And then I was like, oh no, it's not stopping. So I was like, oh no.
Atlanta has so many obstacles. You know what I think it is about Atlanta's traffic, Alex, is that everyone in Atlanta, it's a transplant city. So like, for example, your family's from the Philippines. My family moved there from Illinois. Everyone I know practically is from somewhere else. You don't meet a lot of people in Atlanta that are actually from Atlanta, right? I think that everyone brings a different driving style to Atlanta. So it's this big stew of like people in California, from California drive like real fast and crazy. Florida drivers real fast and crazy. New Yorkers drive like real close and aggressive. It's all together. And then you got the young guys doing burnouts at red lights in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah.
I remember the last time I was there, we were there for Christmas a couple of years ago, and there was literally 20 dudes. Once you get into the perimeter and you're like right by the Varsity by North Ave, there was like 20 teenagers on bicycles in the middle of 400, just like cruising around, like filming themselves, like.
They're crazy.
It's nuts. I'm just like, dude, this is Atlanta. It's nuts. It's absolutely insane here, the traffic.
Yeah. For the viewers that want to see some entertainment on social media, you got to follow ATL Scoop on Instagram. Yeah, ATL Scoop has it has everything going on in Atlanta, kind of real time, but a lot of it's just like the craziness that goes around in Atlanta. You could just slide through and it's just like, a normal day in Atlanta, and it will be the craziest things you'll see.
There's a good YouTube channel I follow called State Boys, and it's all like the state police footage from Georgia State. Some of the stuff. Oh man. God, there are some crazy chases and footage. Did you see that blue belt from Alliance in Atlanta, the cop that stopped that truck that was burning out and hitting people in the road? It was a real viral video. No. It was a really viral video. Yeah. In fact, one of my friends here in Brazil sent it to me, like, dude, look at this. I said, dude, that's my city. That's Atlanta. He's like, no way. It turns out this Georgia State trooper is a blue belt at Alliance, and there's this kid in a black truck peeling out in like a huge crowd of people that were all there, kind of like, I guess, spinning out their tires and stuff. He hits two people. This guy hits the best pit maneuver I'd ever seen, jumps out, hops over the hood with his gun, gets into the guy's window and drags the kid it out. I'll send it to you when we're done.
Oh, wow.
It's the crazy. Oh, it was wild. It was wild.
That's some Tom Cruise action movie stuff right there. Give this guy his purple belt.
Yeah, and like right away, like all my buddies from Alliance are like, "Yo, that's one of ours. That's our dude. That's one of our guys." You know,
we claim him.
Yeah, we claim him. Yeah. Alex, we talked about your favorite bad food to eat. What's your most hated food? What's something you cannot eat no matter what?
Oh man, actually, as I've gotten older, I've like loved food. That's what I always like tell people. I'm like not picky at all. And as I was younger, maybe like I didn't like certain vegetables or like bell peppers, but now I love them. And so like I haven't like found anything like normal food that I don't like. And even like with other foods that are more like delicacies, I still like them. I think growing up in the Philippines, I was like, I've already eaten that, when they talk about the Filipino, like the balut, the duck egg and stuff, where it's like, it's still the duck. Like, I love that. I loved eating that as a kid. And it's so funny because my parents didn't. They just watched me eat it in disgust. And I was like, why did you guys feed it to me if you guys didn't like it? They're like, it was going to be a prank, but then you ended up liking it.
Like, so it wasn't. She ate it.
Yeah. So it became that. So I've still not yet found something I don't like, but I could probably do a food show of like, let's see. I don't know if I'd be down for eating like all these bugs and insects. I'd probably be terrified. But if you blindfold me, I'll probably try it, and I'll be like, "Oh, that tastes pretty good."
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the weirdest thing I ever ate was a grasshopper in Mexico. This guy was he was like baking them and then putting like chili and lime and stuff on it. It was fine.
Oh man,
it was good. It was like eating a Dorito.
Crunchy.
Yeah, it was like
Dorito.
really crunchy. Yeah,
oh my god.
Yeah, it was like
super crunchy.
Yeah, it was like a Dorito. It was super crunchy. It was very crunchy, which helped. If it was mushy, that would have bothered me. That would have got.
Oh yeah.
But if it was crispy, I can deal with. What do you think? What do you think is your biggest phobia?
My biggest phobia, you know what? I'm actually, there's two. I feel like I'm actually very afraid of heights and also drowning. I don't know, water is like just not being able to breathe, drowning, even though we get choked all the time. I was like, I don't want to drown. And then, but like the heights thing is funny because I still fear heights. But when Faye and I first started dating, and she's like an adrenaline junkie. She's like, I want to jump out of a plane. I want to go, like all the stuff dealing with heights. And so I was like, okay, I'm not a bitch. Like, I'm going to do it. I got to make sure like she doesn't think I'm like, I'm soft. So we ended up like, her and her roommate was moving to Japan at the time, like years ago. And so he was like, I want to go jump out of a plane. You guys want to go skydiving or something? And I was like, I just had all 4 wisdom teeth removed. And so I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to. I could get infected. I'll just go there for moral support. I was like, I have a good excuse. Like, and then they were like, we got there and Faye knew some of the employees there and they got them a good deal, and they're like, we could just skydive for like $50. Like, you should go do it. And I was like, you know what? I guess, if you guys are going to do it, I can do it. I'm sitting and we're climbing up the plane and I'm like shaking. Like, I'm so terrified. I was like, why did I do this? Like, what the fuck? and I actually have fun with it. It doesn't feel like sometimes like in a roller coaster where your stomach drops, it doesn't feel like that. Oh, really? It kind of feels like you're being lifted up because of the drag from the wind coming up or something. Yeah. And honestly, I felt more scared when the parachute deployed because then it's slower and now I'm like looking down. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. You have time to think about it now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was insane because we were the last ones to jump off the plane, like me and the person I was attached to. And the guy before me that jumped had a squirrel suit on. He was one of the employees. And so I could see him going down and whatnot. And then right before he like was getting close to the ground, he tried to do some like fancy landing where he like spreads his wings and it makes him go upright to like just land like that. Yeah. And he made a mistake and he like splat. And then I was oh fuck. Yeah. And like the guy behind me, like attached to me, started cursing. He's like, why did he do that? He's so dumb. I lost like 2 friends last week. And I was like, oh my God, are we gonna die? Like, and like all these people were coming to rush down towards him, and I was just like, okay, now it's like set. Like I'm never doing this ever again.
No. That's that's a wonderful thing for the instructor to say to a client. Oh, I just lost 2 friends last week. As you're there.
No.
It's like, why would you say that in front of a customer? Like, oh my God.
I was like, Faye, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it.
So did the guy die?
Fortunately he's all right, but he did break, he broke both femurs, his hip. He had so many broken bones. I was like, that's insane. I was like, why do people do this for fun, for like a living? And I was just like, man, it's just the one things I can't relate. Like, I guess in a way people look at people who do jiu-jitsu as like, they're crazy, you know? And then for me, it's like people that are jumping out of planes or jumping from building to building. I was like, you're really cheating life, you know?
Yeah. No, this was excellent, excellent advertising for why not to go skydive. I'm not going. I'm not going to go. I was thinking that would be a cool thing to do, but you've sold me now. I'm just not going to. I'm not going. That's cool that you did it, though. That's cool that you did it.
I was one and done. One and done.
Who do you think's your favorite grappler of all time?
Of all time, ooh, man, because I was like, you say right now, that's easier, but of all time, that's a tough one.
Let's do right now and all time. I'll let you pick 2. Who's your favorite right now?
Oh, well, right now for the females, Fionn Davies. She's the GOAT, right?
Great choice.
And then for the males, I'd say right now for the males, either Mika Galvao or the Ruotolo brothers. Yeah. They're just so exciting to watch and insane. Yeah. Of all time though, I'd probably have to choose like one of the GOATs. Like I'd say either Roger Gracie, because I mean honestly for me, I love jiu-jitsu that is simple to the point, very controlled. Yeah, I'd say Hodger then.
Yeah,
we'll go with Hodger.
Solid choice. Yeah, Hodger's someone like I always say that Hodger was like he uses the basics, but at the Jedi level. It's just like you know what I'm saying. It's just like there's nothing super fancy about it. It just works, and you know what he's gonna do to you, and he does it anyway. And so I was always fascinated by Hodger for that reason. Yeah, good choice. Who's your favorite superhero? Do you have a favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero, I'd say. It had to be like something I'd want to do. Like they have to have the superpower that I want to. And you know, it's crazy because I'm afraid of heights, but I've always wanted to be able to fly. Yeah. Learn how to fly. Everyone's like, why don't you just transport if you're afraid of heights? I was like, no, I want to see the scenery, even though I'd be deathly afraid.
Yeah, but if you can
I'd coast low.
Yeah, exactly. You can control your own speed and you can keep yourself from falling if you can fly. So the fear of falling is gone. Yeah. Well, it's
probably like Superman or something, just because I feel like he's like basically indestructible.
That's a good choice. And then of course, your superpower. I was going to ask a follow-up question. What would be your superpower? So you'd want to fly.
Fly.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
I need to conquer my fear and be a real superhero.
That's awesome. What do you think is? Let me pick another good one for you here. I got a couple more left. What's your favorite submission?
My favorite submission, I'd say, is a wrist tie, a guillotine. But a really good a wrist tie guillotine. Sean Applegate actually showed me my guillotines, and ever since then I'm like, dude, this is the only way I'm gonna do it. And then Craig Jones was at his school for a seminar and taught basically the same guillotine with like a different grip or something, and I was like, see, Sean knows.
That's awesome. Yeah, Sean's a good friend of mine. He's a great dude, man. Yeah, Sean's helped me a bunch with my he was helping me with my saddle position, some leg entanglement stuff when I was there last. So that's cool you've worked with him too. He's a great dude.
Yeah, I love cross training with them. Everyone there, they have a really solid program. You know, Ryan Aiken has been climbing the ranks, like definitely a heavy hitter. Can't wait for trials.
Ryan and I, me too. Ryan and I started at the same school. I remember when he first started jiu-jitsu, he was still in high school. And he came in just a real kind of modest kid, and then you see him accelerate within a year. You're just like, oh my God, dude, what happened to this kid?
Oh my God. He's like, why are these kids getting so good so fast? Dude, I know that's what I look. I know, exactly. It's the McDonald's.
It's the McDonald's. I was gonna say, what are they putting in the milk at school, dude? What are these kids drinking? It's unbelievable. Final question for the Pummel Game, Alex. If a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now in Atlanta, what's the first thing you do?
Ooh, zombie apocalypse in Atlanta.
And that's where The Walking Dead took place. So it's like the most probable. The CDC's right there. So.
Oh, man, yeah. See, I should have, like, my older brother watches The Walking Dead. I should have watched it, and maybe I know better. But I'd probably take my dogs and Faye, and I'd probably honestly go to Steve, my old Professor Steve, because he's always been like the ammo, the gun guy. I feel like he just knows what to do in an apocalypse. Like, he's already set. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to your house, and you're gonna tell me what to do, because I don't know what how to survive regardless.
That's always the best answer. I think find the guy that knows that has the guns and can get to a hilltop somewhere and hold off the zombies. That's definitely the best call, I think. And Alex, that was the final question for the Pummel Game. Congratulations, you win. You got your double underhooks.
Hell yeah. Yes.
So Alex, you recently filmed an excellent instructional with us here at BJJ Fanatics. The topic that you chose I thought was a really refreshing one to see, because many jiu-jitsu athletes that cross over into wrestling learn the takedown game, but you chose to focus on how to stop wrestling from the perspective of a jiu-jitsu player, and I think that's awesome. I love that you used this unique perspective you have of being someone that's competed avidly in both sports to break down how jiu-jitsu people can stop wrestlers. So let's dive into this. What is something that your purely jiu-jitsu based opponents do wrong that allows you to wrestle easy against them?
Yeah, they don't know how to sprawl. A lot of people just don't know baseline defense, which is the whole course of the instructional is around like what should be your priority list at each position, whether they're have upper body ties, upper body controls, and they're trying to take you down from there, or if they're attacking your legs, leg attacks and stuff like that, as well as just your stance. Like, the biggest thing with jiu-jitsu people is like they just don't know how to stand on their feet. They feel uncomfortable, and I could tell they feel uncomfortable just the way they're moving and they're standing. So I could read people and I feel them out very quickly in a match, so I could immediately start gathering knowledge and starting to see how they feel about like what happens if I do this, I do that, And it was really great that I felt the reason why I decided on the defensive portion was that when I started wrestling at Life University, the coach, Christian Flavin, he starts off like almost every season with your baseline defense. He teaches all these girls, whether they're brand new, day one wrestling, to even number one high school recruits, and they've already won lots of titles in high school, moving into college, and they learn their baseline defense. So a lot of it comes from this, and it's like I was, an average wrestler, and then after college, I feel like I have such a good, solid foundation just from Christian and Ashley Flavin over at Life University, that I was like, man, I need jiu-jitsu people to know this. Like, this is so easy to defend every shot. And I was like, if you could defend every shot, every takedown that gets thrown at you, then it's so much easier to score. If you know how to position yourself, position your body, you're not putting yourself at risk of getting hurt. Or at least if someone starts like dropping in on a single on you and they're trying to like bring your foot outside the line of the knee, like how to react to it so you're not hurting yourself, So this was a big thing for me, and actually statistics-wise, collegiate and Olympic wrestling, the number one scored takedown is like a snap go behind or a sprawl go behind, and so now, especially with like ADCC and how much we use turtle and front headlocks, like this is a great tool to add to your games, especially at the beginning, because you could show like a jiu-jitsu person how to, it's really hard to show them like being offensive and being able to take down other wrestlers, but because they might have more experience, they have more time, But if you show that same jiu-jitsu person how to not get taken down, which I feel like is more simple, because then they can just rely on the other person being offensive and being able to always stuff their shots, put their bodies in a great position, then it's easy to score, and you'll eventually find a way to score, or you'll just frustrate the hell out of someone who's already been wrestling and they're like, oh, I can't freaking score on this scrub, It's like,
That's outstanding. So. Well, I love how much you focused on the foundation of wrestling in this instructional. I think oftentimes when people envision applying wrestling to their jiu-jitsu, whether it's defensively or offensively, they tend to think of the big things like shots and quick level changes and cutting angles and scrambling. And while these are all significant aspects of wrestling, obviously, sometimes they overlook the most simple principles like stance and footwork. And as with anything,
100%.
As with anything, like if you skip the foundation of a house, the house will crumble. You know what I mean? Like you have to have a good foundation. What do you think are the most important things about stance and footwork that you think should be drilled often for people that are just starting out in wrestling?
Yeah, starting out wrestling and or jiu-jitsu is just and we did this in college wrestling too. Like he took all the girls and was like, told us, you don't know wrestling unless I taught it to you. So everything you learned in high school, whatever, I don't care if you're the number one athlete, we're going to restart from zero. And so we'd sit there in practices and work on our stance, whether it was just like shuffling, driving forward, giving ground. That's a big thing. People don't know how to give ground, in a protected form without like exposing their hips all the time. But and then it started becoming fancier about, back step penetrations, regular shots and stuff like that. So it's just finding your stance, whether, you're square, you like to have a staggered stance, lead footed, and getting really comfortable with that. And then once your legs feel comfortable, having your upper body complement your stance too. Biggest thing is just honestly keeping your elbows close to your body. You're not overextending yourself. And I feel like I've seen a couple of videos of Danaher talking about that, like recapping some of the things that Giancarlo versus Hulk was doing at ADCC Worlds, the last one, and whatnot. So I feel like it blends like this instructional, whether you're trying to get something out of it, whether it's just leg attacks or even from a judo perspective, from a Greco wrestling perspective. I was fortunate, like in collegiate women's, it's only freestyle wrestling. So I did folk style in high school. I did a couple off seasons of freestyle when I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu in high school, and then college came and we did, only freestyle. So it was really cool to see how the styles blend in and then see how that mixes in with jiu-jitsu. But I feel like it's no matter what level you're at, there's a lot to be taken in from the instructional. I mean, I work with like other high level wrestlers here, or whenever we have pro trainings too, and we always kind of go back and forth about about a bunch of different options we have and baseline defenses. And I feel like it's kind of compromise into this is going to be your A option, B option, C option, so that it makes it easy for you to choose. Even though you have a bunch of options, these are going to be your smartest ones for just shutting down the game. Your baseline defense is, so to speak.
That's great. I love that. That's really outstanding. Yeah. Alex, let me ask you this. What do you think for jiu-jitsu players that haven't had wrestling experience, what do you think is like a really important overarching concept of takedown defense? Like what is something that people can start practicing or putting into play now, or to at the very least keep in mind if they're dealing with someone on the feet that does have wrestling experience? What's a good concept to keep themselves safe from a takedown?
Yeah, I talk about these concepts, I think, in the beginning of the instructional too, but something as simple as like knowing, we talk about our 7 lines of defense. First is your stance and motion. So learning how to move around on your feet. But some major things that will help people out in general too is that keeping your elbows close to your body to not overextending. Whenever you're sprawling, something as simple as every time you sprawl, you're always trying to cover the head, okay? So that you keep their head underneath your body, so it's very difficult for them to posture up and build up, okay? And then other things like when we're on our feet, when you have people that are very athletic, they move really fast and you're like, I don't know what's going on. Something as lowering your stance, keeping your hands down, and then finding a connection, like climbing up from the arms to the head, like finding a 2-on-1 on the arm, and then start building head position so that you could slow down their pace. Okay. It doesn't mean that you have to start attacking, but you're making a connection so you could feel when they move, and then whether they shoot on you, whether they try to, gain some upper body connection, you'll know how to, and then you'll be able to know how to defend it or know how to peel out of the upper body ties to get yourself back into a neutral position.
Alex, where wrestlers often have the advantage in the takedown department, jiu-jitsu players usually have the advantage in the submission department. So as a jiu-jitsu based athlete, what have been some of the, I guess, easiest routes to exposing wrestlers to submissions?
Oh, 100%. Like knowing how to do a good sprawl, knowing how to sprawl and cover the head always leads to, I feel like that's why my game is so choke oriented, headlock, like guillotines, darces, anacondas. They all open up whenever I can, take advantage, make a wrestler take a bad shot, and put them underneath my chest, underneath my hips. Then I can take advantage. As soon as we get down to the sprawl position, I feel like a lot of jiu-jitsu people will start feeling a lot more comfortable and can start, deciding whether they want to, pull safely from there, or, use that to attack the head or go behind, or, attack the legs, depending on what reactions they're giving you, but it's just like the first step is just like getting them down to the ground where they're in a bad posture, overextending them or packing them to where now you can control the game, and now you don't feel as exposed or vulnerable because we're in a better position, less likely to get hurt if we're closer to the ground. There's not a lot of big impact of like having to fall down and landing in a weird position.
That's great. That's outstanding. Well, guys, if this is an aspect of your game you're wanting to work on, I really recommend this instructional. Alex put together a great instructional here. It's called Wrestling Takedown Defense for Grappling, and it's available right now at BJJFanatics.com, so go check it out. Alex, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2024? What are some things you hope to accomplish by the end of the year?
So the whole focus this year over at the gym is going to be West Coast trials and winning West Coast trials to solidify my spot for ADCC Worlds at the end of this year. So that's the main focus right now. So it's kind of I haven't competed in the gi actually in a while, and especially at black belt. And I still want to do gi worlds and whatnot. I'm probably not going to do it this year, but depending on like if I get into ADCC worlds this year, after ADCC worlds, I think I'm going to switch into the gi, start getting points, and start looking into gi worlds the following year, 2025.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Alex, it was great getting to catch up with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Like I said, it was really cool getting to watch your career as a kid in the younger divisions when I was reffing back in the day in Atlanta, to seeing you reach the levels you're reaching now. So huge congrats. Obviously, a result of tremendous hard work. And you're welcome back on the show anytime you'd like to come back in the future.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for the patience too with the technical difficulties we were having, but I'm glad we were able to figure it out.
It's all part of the job. No worries. I appreciate your time today, Alex. It was awesome. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Alex, it's real easy to do so. She's most active on Instagram. It's Enriquez218. So make sure you guys follow her there. So she's also active. She's got a great YouTube channel, ATL-JJ, ATL-JJ is her YouTube channel. so make sure you guys hit subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when she adds new videos. The website is atlantajujitsu.squarespace.com. That's a great place to keep up with everything she's got going on. If you guys are ever traveling through Atlanta and you want to get choked out by Alex, she's always at Atos Atlanta. So go get some training in at your own risk. I'm just kidding. She's a super cool person. You'll have a good time. If you guys can't make it to Atlanta, you can learn from Alex anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. She has a great instructional we talked about today called Wrestling Takedown Defense for Grappling. If this is an area of your game that you're wanting to improve upon, I really recommend this one. She did a great job breaking that aspect of the game down. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.